So hello guys. If you remember the last time we spoke, we were still working on our book management system, and we are supposed to start working on the models. Um, I got a review that my voice is very low in the last conversation, so I hope this is a bit better in comparison to the last one. So before moving further with the project structure, I felt the need to try to give a proper breakdown of Django architecture, particularly the model. Django has an architecture called the MVT architecture, and it allows you to connect model, views, and templates together. And this architecture has been groundbreaking in most system designs, and the actual aspects we are dealing with presently would be the models. So I'm trying to write this down to give proper context on what MVT is. So let's start with the models itself. Django models. Django models. I'm sorry, I am not at this. I have never learned about editing videos or anything. So I'm actually just pushing out the content in real time and like not in real time since I'm not streaming, but the content I'm pushing out there are not edited. So I sincerely hope you're able to just gain valuable knowledge from what I'm pushing out there. So Django ORM, like we really have to talk about Django ORM. Django ORM. Now, a backend developer by default has something to do with a server, and that is the storage of the entire system or web application. Imagine Facebook, for example, they have a server hosted somewhere, and whenever a user is trying to fetch something, they go to the server and fetch that information. Now, the challenge with this is it's not just the server because we are no longer working on static applications any longer. We are literally working with dynamic web applications in most cases. Take Facebook for example, you can chat someone, get replies in real time, and other stuff. So we need to interact with something that stores those information, and that stuff is called the database. But by default, every other programming language has a way to communicate with their database. And for the database we're referring to, we have two types of database. We have um, SQL database, which is SQL. You can call it SQL or SQL. I prefer using SQL database, and NoSQL database. I'll actually have a detailed explanation on these two databases, the distinction and other stuff. There will be a playlist that will be rolling out for these particular databases to provide in-depth understanding of what each and every one of them is. But for now, we want to focus on the SQL database. And SQL database has some syntax of communicating. We have a way to communicate with the database, and it is called SQL query. SQL query. It's a programming language for database, like for SQL databases only. And the challenge here is, sorry, the challenge with this is, by default, if I'm a Python developer, I am not too familiar with SQL. By the time I was learning Django, I never knew anything about database and other stuff. I just knew I knew about database, sorry, but I never knew about anything like SQL queries and stuff. I did not even understand how everything works in detail. But it kind of became an issue because in the long run, you start working with large scale application and you start looking into optimization techniques. So I have to make you understand that Django has something built in to, it's more like a sweet spot for Django developers to avoid working with a new domain they're not familiar with, which is the SQL query, and this leads to Django ORM. Django ORM. So we'll talk about that also in another tutorial. So let's just move to the application. Let's talk about Django models itself. Django has a way to work on blueprints, and a blueprint is more like a table name or a table name in a database record. In my Django presently, I have db.sqlite3 as a database. We'll try to explore that as soon as possible, but let's try to create a a blueprint for our Django, our book management application. We can use any other stuff, but I want to make use of that particular context to give better understanding of what we are referring to. So I want to go straight to it and not move around. In order to work with Django models, Django models is strictly on object-oriented programming. So you really have to have basic knowledge or like basic idea on OOP. The first thing I need to do is from Django.db, which comes by default. I actually have to clear the entire storage, import models. And this means that I want you to go to Django and get me models from something called DB. We can actually inspect DB and see what is inside DB. You can see DB has signals and a lot of jargons there. It's not jargon basically, it's a bit more deep than that, but we'll get to that very soon after we've worked on most of the stuff. So let's start with a simple Django blueprint for category, because in a book management system you need the category to be available, and one of those things we can do with the category is to create the blueprint for it. So I'll start with something called class category and have something called models, and in models there is a class that has been created called model. What I'm trying to do here is I'm creating a new class called model category, and I'm trying to inherit the model attribute that was created inside these models into category, so you can use certain things that I don't have to construct from ground level. To give you a better understanding about this is what I would have done if I were to create a category model from scratch without inheriting. I would have worked with a lot of stuff that is similar to this, and there will still be need for correcting and removing certain stuff, but in most cases I'll be writing nothing less than 600 lines of code or so, right? Just to make this is just like providing background context on what this particular model does. But I thought it's 600 lines of code, but it's way more than that. It's way more than that. So let's go back to the program and start working with what we have. So after inheriting this model, I can start defining things I need in my schema. And one of those things I need in my schema, actually the first thing I need is to have the category name, and this is a field under the table category, and I can have something like models dot char field. Now the models itself that was imported, they have different kind of fields, and the first one we'll be addressing today is called a char field. A char field, if you have your background understanding on strings in Python, you understand what char field does, right? A char field is more like a string in the sense that you have things in quotes, right? And you can write something in between, but we'll try to go deep into it a little. One constraint about char field is it needs something else. A char field has limits. It has imposition on limits, so you have to include the limit, the maximum length of characters you want in that name, that field called name. If I were to pass in something like 20, that means the characters that a user creates while creating a category should be 20 maximum. So let's save this and try to run our server. If I'm running my server, the first issue I will have actually would be that I have not made migrations from the previous applications that we were creating. So we'll try to do that here, and also have not migrated this particular model. Anytime you work with your models, you need to interact with you need to prepare a script that will be interacting with your database and telling it what has changed, and that script is generated automatically using a command in Django. As far as nothing is going on with your program and other stuff, it should work fine. So to generate that script, we run Python 3. If you're a Mac user, you type in Python 3, or Linux user and Python 3. And if you are a Windows user, you type in py, just py, or Python info, and manage.py, make migrations. This command prepares a script. I want you to see this. In my migration script, you can see I have an init.py empty, nothing is there for now. But let's try to make migrations. and automatically I have a script created and has what ID and name. You will notice that in my Django models I did not include the ID. So one of those attributes, one of the advantage of inheriting the model class is it helps you create an ID field when you didn't provide it by default. So after making this migration, does it mean that it's working? No. After making migration, we still have to do one more thing. We have to make sure the script that was prepared is sent to the database, so the database can start processing it to and update the design of the system on the database. So to do that, we run Python 3. For Windows user, you type in Python or py, and we type in manage.py migrate. And after doing this command, it migrates the entire stuff, and I can run server presently. So let's run server Python 3 manage.py run server to show that everything is working fine. Okay, good. But this is not where we'll be focusing our attention on. We want to really understand how we can work with this category field. So the native approach is going straight to the Django shell based on the documentation on Django. But I found this approach a little bit challenging, especially while I was navigating around Django and other stuff. I could not really understand what is going on. So I would take a different approach by registering this category in something called an admin.py. Yeah, this is not an admin class, so we'll try to keep it as simple as possible. All you have to do is run from .models. So you're saying go to the models that I have in my application, and you don't include the .py because you are importing. If you have issues navigating around this, go reference your knowledge on packages and modules. It should provide detailed context on how this works. So from .models, import category, because that's the category we have, and all I have to type in is admin.site.register. .register, and what am I registering? The category. After doing this, I'll save my file, and I should run server by default. I want to show you something quickly that run server would not really work. So manage.py run server, it will work actually, but I mean I won't be able to access the database I need. In order to get to the database, after clicking on the link that was provided on my run server, I have to type in /admin to take me to the admin section. Now it's asking for a username and a password. I never had one. I never created one. So how do I create it? There is no create admin or something here. The command has to run on the terminal. So I have to stop server presently and run a command called Python 3 manage.py create super user. And this allows me to create a user that has permission over it has the admin permission. And I can type in, let's type in Ola for example. I'll keep the email address blank, and I'll type in Ola as the password to confirm the password. And it's telling me that we have some validations in Django by default, but the create super user allows me to break those validations. If I should type in Y and enter, I'm able to bypass the validation and create the user anyway. So since I have this on record, I can go to my user and type in Ola and Ola as the password. Sorry, I forgot to run server. So I have to Python manage.py run server and still come back to my project, then log in by typing Ola and Ola, and I should be having something like this. Yeah, a lot of issues. First, categories. Why am I having YS instead of IES? If I try to create a new category, let's try something else. On the category section, I have a category field. Let's try to create a new category. I can type in crime and save. What I notice here is it's telling me category object 1, because the category is now a class, and every new category I create there is an object for the category. It's an object created for that particular category. So how do I go about changing the narrative around this? I think we all understood string We all understand how string works here, string representation. So I can use the representation, representation, but I prefer using the dunder string representation, which provides, since this is a character field, and all I have to do is type in self dot name. What I mean by doing this is, rather than provide me objects, category object 1, category object 2, I want you to provide me the name of the category that was just created. That means if I create a new category, just give me the name instead of the object 1 we have here. So let's save this, and I have to just go to the browser and refresh, and I should have crime here automatically. Now, since it's a character field, a lot of issues come up, like people saying, what if I type in 1 as a category? Let's see what will happen if we type in 1 as a category. If I click on enter, yeah, 1 is created. But I want you to take note of this. The one you see over there is different from this one in Python, right? So this one here really means it's an integer, and this one here means it's a string. When you use a character field, that one that was created becomes a string, because by default an integer would not work in Django. So let's start with the simple setup here. Let's walk through what we've done so far. Yeah, we created a category model. We have a name, record, and the maximum length is provided, and we use a string representation on it, and we also register this on the admin. So the next session of this tutorial would actually include more in-depth understanding of each field. Like the character field we have available that we talked about, we have some other fields that we can mention in our Django models. So watch out for that. See you very soon. Thank you so much for this.